All right, it's time to get stuff done. And today I'm joined by Mandy Pao. Mandy is the founder of the Aligned Entrepreneurs and EQ International, as well as COO of Atlas Chiropractic. She's based in Hong Kong, where we are talking to each other today. And I'm really happy to have a founder on, because to be a founder, you absolutely have to be able to get stuff done. So Mandy, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
And so I want to ask a little bit about your background, and then I want to get into how you personally like to get stuff done. How did you come to set up your own business?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting story if I were to share. So after I graduated, I only worked for a company for 1 year. In my whole life, I basically just worked for one company, and that's for only 1 year, which is right after my graduation. I have worked with a luxury fashion PR company in Hong Kong. And then very shortly after, I think probably like a few months in, I already know that I am not really, fitting with the job. But because, at least I kind of need to stay for 1 year. That's how I was telling myself. And also because it was referred by one of my friends. And so I was like, okay, I don't really want to, make her referral, relationships, relooks bad in front of her. Right.
Sure.
So I kind of stay on, but then I think during the whole journey, I didn't really enjoy it. And very shortly after, I just know that it wasn't really aligning with my values. And I oftentimes would feel a little bit depressed. Well, not a little bit. I think now I look back, I was massively depressed, because sometimes when I go into underground, MTL in Hong Kong, I would cry for no reason. And I think I was too young to identify why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. And and then after that, after 1 year mark, and I remember very clearly that I wrote a letter and then I handed it to the HR, and I told the HR, I said, I have decided that I want to leave. And she was like, are you sure? If you stay for 1 more week, you've got double bonus, maybe stay for another week. So I was like, I think I'm kind of really done. So I just basically refused the offer, and I said I just wanted to leave as soon as possible.
Right there.
So that's how I know. Obviously, working, the whole purpose of working is to make money. But if you're not really happy during the journey of you making money, what's the point? So that actually brings me to my freelancing journey. I think that's probably the very beginning of my entrepreneur journey. So I started to take on a few projects, and I got very fortunate to be invited to help with Hollywood, the Transformer red carpet event in Hong Kong. That was my first freelancing project. So I was like, wow, I felt really grateful. I felt really, really lucky. But I think after the period of helping different movie premieres, I also felt a bit unfulfilled. I was asking myself, at that age, I have so many experience working with all these big brands already. A lot of people would dream of working for these people. Why do I feel so unhappy and unfulfilled? And I think that comes to a point where I realized I wanted to start doing something that aligns with my values. And I know that I don't really like to be in a big crowd. I know that I like to connect with people one-on-one. So shortly after, I actually started my own creative marketing and branding agency. Mostly, I mean, I have different mixed profile. I was helping big brands, and then but I feel I like and enjoy more working with small brands. And so later on, I kind of focus on helping impact-driven brands, basically. And yeah, I guess it kind of, my entrepreneur journey kind of started there. So my creative agency was the first point. And then I think throughout the journey, I kind of lost sight of what was important to me again. And I'm kind of really encapsulating my life journey as well as my career journey, all in one together to share. And yeah, in 2022, I basically got into burnout, even though I was doing something that I really like. But because within 2 years' time, I've got no funding, but I grew up the team from myself to a team of 8. So it was really rapid. And I was the only one, I at that time, I felt like nobody really understand me in the team. And, I can't even take a proper break. If I go back to, visit my family in UK, I was still checking my email. So it's just very, very unhealthy. So yeah, 2022, finally, I've got got to a point where I was like, this is enough. And that's the point where I realized that I was like really heavily, like burnout. I think once I realized that, actually, it was a really interesting timing because that's the end of the year. And I went back to the UK and I was basically sick for the whole month, like while I was in the UK. Because I know,
stopped,
like
the
when you
stopping
stop and
somehow
things just come out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, it just allows it to happen. I think it happens, right? Like when you like, people do get sick when they travel because they start to relax their body, and you don't really run your life with adrenaline anymore, and your body just suddenly just stops and everything just come out. So
Catch up.
So that's what happened. And yeah, I definitely have a lot to share with like how I get stuff done, because obviously with these, like, I mean, in Hong Kong as well, the working culture, it's very intense. So you do need, like, I would consider myself like a highly organized person, so I do have like a lot of like tips and sharing that I can't wait to share with everyone today.
But it seems like you did a very bold move professionally relatively early on in your career. I think a lot of people dream about setting up a business, doing their own thing. Even freelancing is, from a certain perspective, more risky than like big company full-time work. So for those who are maybe considering this and thinking, you obviously very rapidly realized it was just not what you were doing before was just not right for you. But what gave you the confidence to step out of that? I mean, obviously it seems like you gave your resignation without having that next step in place. Where did you get that kind of confidence to do that?
I think it's a really good question, because I oftentimes think about that as well. And I thank to my partner, because he was the one who dragged me out, basically. He was the one. Well, I mean, the conversation has been going on for, I think, probably like 2 years, that he noticed, because he also got his burnout as well. And like, it's quite bad as well. And then he was like, I don't really want you to experience what I'm experiencing now. So. And he see all the signs there, because when we were together, we were just like really career driven person. And so like he kind of like saw all the patterns that he has been doing, and then he was like, you're doing exactly what I was doing, like, and I think at first I was kind of in denial, and I was like, no, I'm fine, like, I just want to, just let me do it, like, let me try it. And I think at some point, like the conversation of like having family and next step comes up, and he said something that it really hit me. And he was like, I just don't see how we are going to have children if both of us are like this. And that really hits me. And that basically really put a stop on me. And I was thinking like, okay, I think this is getting serious. I think like it takes him a lot to say that, and it's, obviously it's not easy to navigate through that as well. So yeah, I think we did have a conversation, and then I just decided, I was like, okay, I think I value family and, like our relationship more than, like work. I think with work, and that kind of brings me to start reflecting a lot of questions. I start to ask myself, like, how do I define success in life? What kind of lifestyle that I want to live? And it's when I start to have these moments to kind of really stop being in denial and just really admitting that I'm going through a burnout, and also admitting that this situation is affecting everyone around me. Like, I was not really available for my friends or like family. And, I was always just like thinking about work and always irritated and, just in bad mood. And I think I didn't realize how much it has impacted me until that point. And I have to thank him, and that basically gave me space. And I think at first, obviously, it's really difficult, but I took myself in a retreat in Hong Kong, and I basically was switching off completely. I didn't turn on my phone. I was off emails, off everything, like social media, everything. So it was just like stillness and like, silence in the retreat. So that basically gives me some space to think about questions like that, like, how do I define success in life? Like, what do I want in life? Like, what kind of work setup and life setup that I want. So then at that moment, I was shocked to find out I was doing something that is completely opposite what I wanted. But I think a lot of us don't really have the space to sit down and think about that. We think, oh, okay, start an agency. Of course I want to grow. Of course I want a big team, but actually I don't really like managing a big team. Like, I don't really want so many people to manage, and I don't want so many clients to manage. It's just so many requests every day. Like, I just want simple business model. I want simple business model, profitable. I want to be able to travel. I want to work from home. I want to work next to my dog. Like, that's my dream life, right?
Okay.
So yeah, like that retreat was really a turning point, and I was shocked how I've been living the life that I didn't want, but I thought I want. So I think I was so absorbed by
Yeah,
what the society tells me what to do, and like
100%.
society say
Yeah,
successful, and so yeah, it's kind
definitely.
of crazy, but it's definitely very reflective, and it gives me a lot of courage to know. Well, I guess going back to your questions, right? Because I know exactly what I want. I'm so clear about what I want now, so that's why it's so easy for me to make the decision. So I basically kind of just reshift the way how I set up my business, and just the way I hire people and manage people as well, and that's how I actually started the Aligned Entrepreneur, which is a platform where I teach entrepreneurs to gain freedom while still keeping the business profitable. Yeah. So with that year, I'm proud to say that after I transformed the business model, I actually work 50% less, but I triple my income in just a year. So I'm very happy with where I am now.
Yeah. I for me, the analogy I always like to use is a fish swimming upstream. If you're
Mm,
constantly swimming upstream and it's always hard, you probably haven't got the right setup, or in this case, business
mm,
model.
that's
It
true.
it shouldn't be hard all of the time, right? Um,
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
it doesn't always have to be a struggle,
Mm,
a grind, because as you've just
mm,
said, you've encapsulated it perfectly. You worked 50% less and you tripled revenue. So
yeah.
it wasn't about how much time you're putting in. It wasn't about dedicating 24/7 to it. I wanted to bring up your tagline because you mentioned aligned entrepreneurs, and that's about the freedom that entrepreneurs can get. Tell me a little bit more about what it is you do, and how you help entrepreneurs.
So yeah, I have a pretty solid roadmap where well, actually this is the exact system that I use on myself during that year. So I think first of all, like not just entrepreneur, I think everybody, if like take some time to really understand what you want, and always try to question what the society tells you what's right. So I think that's the really first questions, because without knowing what you want, I mean, it sounds very easy, but a lot of people don't do that, and we don't have
Yeah.
the luxury to create that luxury for ourselves to do that. So I think, yeah, first is definitely get clear on what you want in life, and then second is to work smart. I always say, like, it's about working less, but we all need money to survive. So it's about working smart and still keep the business profitable. So I'm a big fan of systemizations, and keep like building like SOP and documentations and all that, and just hire like really good middle management people. So um, middle management people would be relatively a little bit more expensive
Hmm.
because they're good people, but obviously there are different type of middle management people as well, because I'm currently running like two businesses now. One, it's with the Atlas Chiropractic studio in Hong Kong, and then the other one obviously is from my coaching platform. So with two businesses, there are still middle management people. Even with my coaching platform, it's a very, very nimble, flexible business model, but my middle management person is my project manager. It's that easy. You just need to hire someone, and you build a system to train those people to work and execute for you. So I think this setup like has worked for me like fantastic. Like it's been fantastic experience working with this business model. Like last year, I traveled to Bali like 2 months at the end of the year. Business still making profit. My project manager basically helped me to manage like different freelancers. So it's great. Like obviously it doesn't really require a lot of my input. And with
Okay.
all the SOP and the documentations as well.
So, a question about this middle manager. So, essentially, we're in the
Mm,
realms of hiring somebody fresh, young, hungry, train them up in your way, because they don't have any other way, and it's sometimes it can be difficult to hire a very experienced person because they have their own way, they want to do it their way, and they also can be expensive. But what
mm,
you're saying is that actually, what makes sense is to hire that person with experience because they already can do what you need them to do. That's basically you're saying. And so then is it do you still keep that person in your same location? This is not outsourcing to like a virtual assistant type of setup, right?
So I use a virtual assistant. My PM is actually from Indonesia. So I'm a big fan of outsourcing to people who's not with my country because they, like the cost is lower and I like working from home. So I kind of wanted to use this and leverage this opportunity to create a remote team.
Yep.
But going back to your first questions, I don't think I have specific preference preferring like more experienced people or like younger people. I have experience working with both, but I feel like no one is perfect. You will still get problem with anyone working with you, really. So you just kind of like having different problems. So obviously, with the experienced people, probably they will have their own opinion a little bit more stronger, and it's a little bit more harder to train them using your system, but they will probably provide more values to you. So that's the pros and cons, right? With the younger people, probably they will be a little bit more like open to your suggestions. But probably they are less experienced. So, like you probably need to be a little bit more hands-on to train them. So I can see, I guess it all comes down when I hire people, I always see their attitude and their, and the life setup as well. I personally like working with mom because I feel like they're more reliable and, like they probably need the job more than younger people. So, but again, I think obviously there are a lot of like great young people out there as well. So I think it really it's, kind of just need to get to understand them and see what their life setup is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that you brought up the working mum because from what I can see, those who are the most elite level of productive are working mums. They have so much to do and so little time. It's basically the opposite of Moore's law, where work expands to fill the time given. Like generally they have no time, so they have to do everything as efficiently as possible and just get it done. So I have a lot of respect for working mums balancing the two. I mean, they're very different jobs. I mean, maybe we shouldn't call parenting a job, but it is a full-time job, and it is incredibly difficult. And then balancing very different activities is difficult. Some people cannot task switch very, very easily, but yeah. So I want to come to my key question, the one that I ask all of my guests who come on. And so this is going to be now, I guess, the 31st time that I've asked somebody this question on the podcast. How do you go about getting stuff done, and how do you make sure that you get everything done that you need to?
I use a lot of time blocking. Since I'm running, like multiple businesses, I actually time block different time slot with different business agenda. So like my first business will be exactly. So my first business, it will be in green. My second business, it will be in orange. Okay. So during that, like Monday, usually I would be dedicating that into a deep focus day. So I don't really schedule any meetings that day. So I need one day which is no human interaction. Basically, I'm like deeply focused on working what I need to work. And then Tuesday is the day where I go out to have meetings. And then Tuesdays, I schedule all the meetings and coaching clients if they have like classes and all that. And, if I go out for like speaking, so like human interaction day is like Tuesday. And then Wednesday, it's like in the morning, a little bit of like meeting time. And then afternoon, it will be for my second business. Thursday is also like meeting day. And then Friday, I usually will be off. So Friday, it really depends on my mood, but I make it official that I only work 4 days because I want to kind of have a flexibility where Friday, if I feel good, then I'll jump in and work. But if I work, I want to be able to fully focus on working. So I've got like potentially two deep focus work days to really help me to get stuff done. And those days are really, really important because, I mean, I think, a lot of people probably like, even including myself before, I don't really do time blocking. I'll be like checking emails and like replying to messages, jump on the task for like 30 minutes and then like checking emails again. It's just, you just don't have the time to really focus on doing something extensively. And I think that's why a lot of tasks get delayed and all that. So I think time blocking is definitely my top tip. And then I also use 2-minute rule a lot. So anything that takes under 2 minutes, I just get it done first. If not, then I'll basically just use my project management tool to delegate it or either like schedule it to the other day.
I'm glad you've mentioned that one, because another
Mm,
guest mentioned that as well, and I then heard
mm,
from some listeners who found that
mm,
very useful and have now implemented themselves. So I think now
mm,
repeating it again and having people really take it on board will hopefully have a ripple effect, that more and more people can use that. But I'm really
mm.
curious if, since you are the business owner, do you not have still calls or things which interrupt your blocked off time? How do you deal with, or people that can't meet on your day? How do you handle those
Mm.
exceptions?
Yeah, I think it takes me a while to really figure out a schedule that works for that setup. But yeah,
Right.
like obviously, there are weeks that if the meeting is really important, then I would squeeze it in. But if the meeting can wait, then usually I would say no first.
Hmm.
Or, I try to not meet with people too regularly because people love going out for like coffee and stuff, and I think like with the commute time, you get to the coffee, you chit chat, and then you leave the coffee shop, and then you go to the office. It's probably half a day already,
Half a
like
day. Yeah.
and yeah, seriously, and I stopped doing that. So unless that there is like really important meeting for me to go, and if I can see that my schedule allows me to just pop into a coffee shop next door, then I will do that. But usually I prefer to have meetings just online or like through emails because I think it's just when you get on a call, you get straight into it
Yeah.
and you just get stuff done. So
Yeah.
so I try to not to have too many coffees. Like yeah, in general, basically.
Okay. I love
Mm.
coffee too much, so I think that's a problem for me. But I just, I mean, I also make my own, so maybe I just need to
Mm.
focus on that. But okay. So then, in terms of the kind of like getting stuff done, and then like exception management that you mentioned, then have you had a time where you've had some kind of like unexpected crisis, something you've had to like deal with just out of the blue? You couldn't anticipate it. How did you go about trying to get back on course?
Yeah, I definitely do. And again, I think it's all about prioritization. I used to be like a really big goal setting person, but like
Hmm.
I think recently I've kind of learned that I feel like sometimes goal setting really makes people kind of like not remembering why they started because you're so, like stuck onto the goal and you kind of forget why you have first started. It's a little bit like how I started with my creative agency. So throughout the year, I've learned that I would still love to have a goal, but the goal is more like a general directions, but I don't really want to have like a month or month plan on it. I would kind of still want, but it takes a lot of discipline. I'm not saying that's easy. So it takes a lot of discipline and it takes a lot of honesty with yourself as well. You kind of need to be honest with yourself. So it's always about like, remembering where the direction is, and always try to prioritize things. And yeah, I guess, like, for example, like COVID, right? Like no one can expect that COVID would hit. But if you're so stuck on the goal that you set, then obviously, like you won't be enjoying the journey anymore. So I think people, or I mean, like we all still need to kind of be like fluid and flexible in the journey because like it's just another kind of journey, but it's still our journey, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that you were able to devise a very clear vision for your career.
mm.
I'm wondering, how did you document that? Did you actually kind of actually like put that down, or was it just a process of iterating it and then internalizing it?
I think it's more like internalizing it and reiterating it because I feel like everyone has their own skill sets and everyone life situation would change what they want to do in their life. Like I think very much so, it kind of echo how I've introduced myself when we first started. Like the mission that I'm carrying today is completely different compared to the mission that I carry, when I first started my creative agency. So I feel like different life journey would kind of, like I'm especially I guess like for me like my life journey, it changed me or shaped me so much, and it kind of just helped me to reiterate my mission, who I want to help with and how I can help with the society and like the community in a wider scale.
And let me use that then to ask about your kind of second business, the chiropractor work that you do. Obviously, very different to what you do with EQ International. What is it that business gives you that's different to the other work that you do?
Yeah, I think the reason why I am passionate about helping Atlas Chiropractic as well, it's because my role is COO. Basically, I help them to optimize operations. So I think my burnout experience has driven me to wanting to help corporate landscape to change. So with my skill sets, obviously with my coaching platforms and my creative agency, I wanted to basically help the corporates to also implement different smarter cooperation system to increase their efficiency. And then with Atlas, it's more like, injecting these like holistic wellness to the working space. Because I born and raised in Hong Kong, and not until my burnout hit, I didn't realize that I was so like bombarded with the culture here, where even though before, when I have lunch more than 1 hour, I would kind of feel bad about it. And if I don't really reply the email in a day, I would feel like I'm not efficient enough, which I think it contributes to, like burnout culture a lot I guess in Hong Kong, or like in city like Singapore, it's quite common.
So for sure.
And that's why, yeah. So that's why I'm passionate about, like potentially like transforming the corporate wellness landscape through that role, basically.
So, but it seems a very nice balance. You almost have a kind of physical well-being and a mental well-being in terms of, being able to help people. So is Hong Kong still, I mean, Korea, famously has long working hours and not great corporate culture generally, although it's definitely evolving. I have to say that. Is it still, is it kind of the same in Hong Kong? Is Hong Kong still glorifying the grind in that sense?
I think it's still, we're still kind of in that culture, but I think the topic of, even like talking about burnout and like corporate wellness is starting to open up. So, which is very positive. But it's slow, but it's, we're working on it.
I think it's like you said about the first stage is denial. And many people don't want to admit or can't, in that initial stage, you feel that everything you've worked for is getting you to that point where you're at. The last thing you're going to do is stop or change or give up when because essentially all of upper education is focusing on trying to get to that supposedly ideal job in whatever form that takes for people, and so it definitely takes people time to get to that point of alignment, but you've kind of been there and done that. I do think about a lot of people that I've met in Korea working in large Korean companies who, when I talk to them offline, they say if they could leave the company tomorrow, they would, but they have these golden handcuffs, they have such good benefits. It's, they have a whole family dependent on them, and that they simply can't afford to leave. There's nothing else that would compensate them. But of course, that is still very much in denial about what is meaningful for them in their life. And I hope that they don't end up having regrets that they worked for so long in a place where they were not really happy. Do you help people to get through that denial stage, or do you really only come into contact people when they're ready for change?
I do come across different, like my coaching clients, they are from different stage. But I guess I always believe that people can't change people. They need to go through something for them to realize that they need a change. Because I was putting myself into their shoes, right? If someone even my partner come to me and tell me to stop working like how I did, I just didn't want to, because there was no driving force for me to stop. Like, why would I, So I think, like, I oftentimes I see my clients, they are kind of hitting into, or like going into that road, but I wouldn't make any comments about it. I think it's very important also for each individual to go through their journey themselves. But of course, like, I'm very happy to kind of give them support at every touch point that they need.
Any advice for people that maybe see, I mean, you mentioned your partner noticed the kind of the early signs, the red flags for you. Are there things which people, if they recognize these kind of things, is there something that they can do? Are there, I don't know, good questions to ask people, ways to induce a bit of self-reflection for people in this situation?
I think the first very powerful question should be, how do you define success in life? And just try to get really deep into it. Like, I try to break it down as well into, how many days I want to work, where do I want to live, how am I imagining a work setup, and, I would like to be always like traveling and just bringing my laptop and having calls in, like beachfront cafe and things like that. So it's very clear to me, this is the setup that I want. And I don't want to just be stuck in Hong Kong, working like 60 hours a week and always answering the phone. And I think for also another really important sign is if you're on holiday and if you can't mentally check out, it's a very big sign for you to really need to check, like if it's a really healthy balance for you to be living like that. And I mean, if you and just be honest with yourself, right? Like, do you really want to live like that for how many years?
Yes, I'm pausing because your words have a lot of meaning for me and my network. I had a conversation with a friend. He's at a company here in Korea and he's taken 1 month vacation. And so I think the way he's done it is he's done 2 weeks of paid and then he's got a kind of unpaid leave to be able to take that extended. And I asked him, are you going to be catching up with emails? How are you going to be keeping in touch with the team whilst you're gone for so long? And he said he'd managed to negotiate to be able to not take his laptop with him. So basically almost guaranteeing that he can't be kind of disturbed. And he felt so proud about that. And I also was very happy for him as well. I think because so many other people, I can't take more than a week. If I'm gone more than a week, it's not going to miss too much and catch up. But I think it's an interesting one that a lot of people do feel that they just cannot unplug. And take, I mean, in a sense, technology, in all that it facilitates and enables, it also encourages 24 hours on in contact as well. And that's another topic that's come up in the Get Stuff Done podcast as well, in the past with people. How about you? I mean, switching off and being able to not think about or worrying about what you have to do. What's your strategy for that?
I think for founder, it's hard to, well, because your business is your baby, right? It's hard to not think about work, obviously. Like, and I'm not trying to advocate people to, like not even having a thought about your work, because I think it's very natural because you care. But I think it's the intensity. If you're on holiday and if you're not checking the emails, and you're still worrying your team would not perform, that's not a good sign. That means that something within the operation side you need to optimize. I guess for me, I do a lot of, I don't really check because I separate my personal phone with my work phone. So I don't really, when I'm traveling, I basically take out my work phone SIM card. So I'm completely disconnect. And I also uninstall my email on my phone as well. So I'm completely, disconnect from my work setup basically. And I find that really just very therapeutic as well, because that you're completely off it.
I can imagine.
So that's my top tip. I think I find that very, very useful, because I also know I'm the person that if I see a client message me, I'll feel bad not replying it. So I'll be like, jumping in and all that. So I don't want to even create that opportunity for myself. So I think just cut it off.
Once you see it, it's going to just just like irritate
Yeah.
you, right? It's like until
Yeah, and you just start thinking about it, and yeah, so it will ruin the trip. So
for sure, for sure. No, and I
yeah.
guess that like probably I can imagine that. Well, firstly, the separation of home phone, work phone, I think is a good one. But then actually
Mm.
taking out the SIM card, that must feel most physically like almost must get weight off your shoulders doing that. I can imagine
Yeah.
if
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
did that, then I would feel that. Okay,
Mm.
and so then where are you for people who are maybe right now they're still in the rat race, they're still in a company but not enjoying it. What
Mm.
advice would you give to them? Some people talk about trying to develop a side hustle, get it going, provide like a transition. I think that can work for some people. It's very difficult. Other people say you just got to make the jump, cut it, and then you're going to make the things happen that need to. Where do you stand for people who are thinking about maybe coming out of corporate and doing their own thing?
I think, obviously it's a big change. So, and I understand it will probably take, for some people, probably it may take years to, make that change. Like based on my experience and with people that I talk to, I think the most safest way to get started, at least, is to find a part-time job. So at least you have part of stable income. And then you kind of just have the time to really work on something that you're passionate about and try to see it as, you know, of course you want to make it work, but it's not going to be like a make or break, you know, like situation as well. Like maybe try it, give yourself maybe like 5 years time. If it works, then that's great. If it doesn't work, then you can always just go back to work anyways. Like nobody said you can't always go back to work at full time as well, right? So I think at least give yourself and I think with this like really important decisions, I always zoom out. So I always try to think about, okay, I would like to live by 90 years old. I assume that I can live until 90 years old. If I just take 5 years off just to try to do what I like, why not?
Yeah.
Like I've got plenty of time. I've got like 85 years time to do more like steady, stable kind of like lifestyle routine and all that. So I guess if anyone is really struggling, just try to zoom out and see that's just a very little chunk of your life.
Mhm.
Hopefully we can make it into like a bigger chunk of life, but just try it and see how it goes.
Yeah. I think that's a key point. People want to try to get profitable in 6 months, or they want to try
Mm,
to land their first client in 30 days, or whatever that might be. Investment within the first year. But I think,
mm,
yeah, take that pressure out of the equation, make the timeline
mm.
a little bit longer, and then you probably will do things in a better way because you're not chasing what's right in front of you. You're kind of investing in better, or whatever that might be, for the business, operation
Yeah,
systems, strategy, client development,
100%.
even. And then obviously a large part of that, and a lot also, I can also say, for you, is a strong personal brand. How have you gone about building your personal brand along the way?
Yeah, I think the first thing that if anyone is interested to build a personal brand is to find out your positioning. So with my positioning, I think it comes in a lot with my personal story. Because you kind of need to be vulnerable when you talk about your personal story and you're willing to share as well. So I guess and everybody has their own different unique stories. So I think if anyone is interested to start their personal brand, just try to learn about yourself and try to also learn about why you wanted to do what you're doing, like the ideas in your head. Because obviously, people who have the idea of starting a personal brand, they must have a goal already. Like this is the group of people that I want to help with, or this is what I specialize in. And you kind of just like, go backwards and think about, oh, why, what kind of my journey have shaped me into who I am today, and why am I passionate about helping this group of people? So I think that's a really good starting point, and that's how I started as well.
Okay. and how do you then what's your best method for amplifying your personal brand and trying to kind of promote your personal brand?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of like always like torn between, because obviously, when people talk about personal brand, they think about, oh, I need to grow my IG and I need to grow my Instagram. And I'm kind of like, 50-50 about that, because I'm not the type of person that I want a lot of attention, but obviously, you kind of need some attention to get the business going as well. So I'm kind of always like torn between that. But I think I have chosen to use a way just to be very, like community based driven.
Okay.
So instead of like having someone to help me to grow the social media followings, I do a lot of like in-person event, because
Okay.
I really value like in-person connection.
So your community is offline predominantly.
Well, currently we also have a WhatsApp group. Yeah, yeah. So I do a lot of like, every Monday we have like different sharings as well. So I value that kind of like in-person real connections rather than, just a like and just a follow. So, but obviously, I see that social media, it's a really powerful platform for people to understand, like your thinking and, like what you're trying to teach. So I see that as a tool for me to just share my thoughts, but not really nurture the relationship with the people that I want to build a relationship with, my community and all that. So,
Yeah.
so they are more, yeah, like on either on WhatsApp or like every few months I do like founders dinner as well. So I'm very much like enjoying the in-person connections with people.
Yeah. I it's the feel good factor of social media is so alluring, and
Mm,
it also makes it's far too easy to be constantly comparing, right? How many followers do
mm,
I have? How many followers do they have?
yeah,
And it's like you said, it doesn't necessarily mean anything because anyone can like, share, follow, whatever,
yeah,
but without any intention, meaning, or actual connection, right?
mm,
And it's also, in the instant moment, something does not have
mm,
to be meaningful or well intended, but it can still just be an absolute tsunami of social media um activity, where you see people
mm.
being plucked from obscurity to being kind of like world renowned, and then certain level get into meme level status, and then
100%, yeah.
um, one of the things that for me, I mean, I don't know whether this is a relatively um, you know meaningless goal, but I think a certain status is of recognition is having your own Wikipedia page.
Mm,
Now, I obviously think, obviously it is a user generated, controlled platform,
mm,
but there's a certain amount of, it has to be sourced, it has to be cited, right, to be able to show a significant amount. So there's that element. I know Wikipedia isn't social media as such, but having
mm,
that, as a status symbol would be one thing for me, rather than the verified blue tick, which
yeah,
social
100%.
media, because there's the
Yeah.
criteria from that, and of course then it got turned into just a paid for feature, and then it takes out the value of community. um,
Mm,
so then, have you come across the differences? We talked about it a little bit with Seoul, Singapore, and Hong Kong's work culture
mm-hmm,
when it comes to the work that you've been doing, the differences of how that touches different nationalities, like the cultural element of doing what you do. Has that brought any challenges, or kind of barriers along the way?
I think the people that I work with, usually it's like around Asia. So I think probably we have like similar like working culture. Well, obviously, I do work with people from Bali because I actually always go to Bali just to unplug. But sometimes I would go to Bali just to work a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I do work with people there, and I find people there are just much more relaxed. So sometimes I will question myself, like, obviously I'm bringing the Hong Kong, like follow-up
Intensity.
speed and everything with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And probably they find me quite intense, to be honest. But yeah, I think it's very interesting. I'm definitely aware, and actually that, kind of like working experience, it does make me reflect, the way how I work in Hong Kong as well. So very interesting insight working with like different people from different countries for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, from the time that I've spent here in Korea,
Mm,
I get treated differently because I'm a foreigner, and
mm,
it's often with appearance or image. There can be both positive and negative aspects. People stereotype, or people make assumptions, or even just
mm,
expectations change. And I think that, as in what we do in terms of more of a personal perspective, yes, there is always a great range in that, but always maintaining like a kind of open mind, no matter
mm,
where the person's from. um, you know
mm,
Especially within recruitment, people are often judged purely in a snapshot, few seconds worth of their CV or resume. And if it's a well-known school, it tick box. If
mm,
it's not a well-known school, then out. Criteria
mm,
that, whereas of course there's so much more to it. But I understand that when there are time constraints and many applications to a particular position, we have to apply some
mm,
filter at that. And so then when it comes to kind of building relationships, sometimes what we say are good ways to build connections, about maybe expressing some of the local
mm,
language of that person, or doing something which is from their culture, which is
mm.
good if it's right. But if it's not right because you've made an assumption about them or where they're from, sometimes can be worse than not doing anything in the first place, right?
Mm.
uh,
It's true. Yeah. I
so
always be very open-minded. Yeah.
definitely. And so does that mean then that you find there's a certain type of person who is attracted to the message that you have, and the way in which you're trying to help people?
I do feel like, well, I mean, the target audience that I'm trying to help with now, I definitely think like, like founders or like, business owner, they would see that like, like, having like a setup to help them to increase the operation efficiency. That's very appealing to everyone who runs a business, I would definitely say. And I guess again, I have to thank my burnout experience to give me that year to really try to come up with different tools and everything. And obviously, I think I got my burnout at a really good time as well, because AI just came out, ChatGPT and all that. So that really helped me a lot too. I think like leveraging AI was also another really key success factors to my success that year, that helped me to reduce my overhead so much, as well as, that's also another reason I can kind of just operate my coaching business with just outsourced freelancers from everywhere.
Mm.
And yeah, I guess it's an interesting time. I think like everyone is trying to learn about AI as well, and I can see that there is like much more potential for different like big or small businesses to incorporate all these like efficiency tools and systems in place.
So you've picked up obviously a skill which has really helped you in your business. If there was one transferable skill that you would put above all the others that you think could be the most
Mm,
valuable or effective, what would that be for you?
mm. I think it's organizational skills. definitely. I think
Okay.
with everyone who wants to excel in their work, you need to be very good at prioritizing and organize everything. Well, because I like the reason why I say that is because I'm sure we all have worked with someone who is not organized, and it's just not easy to work with. Like, like it, they might miss things here and there, and like we might need to jump in and cover their work. So I think at least if someone is very organized,
Yeah.
even though if they're not very good at other area, at least it's not so messy for the
Right.
organization. So I think
Right.
that's a
Right.
really
Right.
really basic core skills. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you said core skill, because that's exactly how I would also
Mm.
term it. It's a skill which a lot of
Mm.
others are built on. Even if
Yeah,
you're not
100%.
particularly good at the specific work that needs to be done in that particular context, if it's well organized, at least it can be a basis
Mm.
for being able to do more. I think building on that, prioritization is a hard one, and it's something that I still
Mm.
struggle with myself. I would say, and I would say that generally I'm pretty well organized, but
Mm.
prioritization is one that I do struggle with, and I think maybe um, you have to be ruthless, and I think there's a company that
Mm.
adopts ruthless prioritization as one of their core values. I'm sure somebody in the
Mm.
audience will fact check that
Right.
for me. That's something that I kind of do still struggle with myself. How do you handle that? I think to a extent you've already explained earlier in some of the things you do, but could you shed a bit more
Yeah,
light on that?
yeah, sure. I think with prioritization, it's easy to lose track if you don't really. I feel like with prioritization, you always need to be very intentional. You always need to slow down to always think about why you wanted to do that thing first. So if you're always kind of on the go, like on the run, no time to think about it, obviously the things that you prioritize it just become another things to add onto it. And and yeah, I oftentimes, and that's why I love my Fridays, because my Friday is like nobody contact me, so it's kind of like peaceful, quiet day where I can really think about things like that. Like
Hmm.
what do I need to prioritize? Like when I get really busy and when I start to get a little bit overwhelming, like I just kind of need to be very intentional about planning all these things. So I think again, like prioritization takes intent. So it's a very intentional exercise, and it
Yep.
needs to be done when you're not busy.
Yeah.
As in it needs to be done when you have your quiet moment, and
Right.
you'll be able to slow down, think about it.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
you can't do
Yeah.
everything, and I think the first
No.
the first
Yeah.
stage is accepting that you can't do everything. Um,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, well, I think that we've pretty much run out of time now, Mandy. So thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and experiences that you've learned along the way. If people would like to reach out to you and get in touch, what would be the best way for them to do that?
They can go to my website. It's the Aligned Entrepreneurs with the at the end.com.
Okay.
And they'll be able to email me or get in touch with me on my Instagram.
All right. Well, thank you once again. And to everyone else who's been listening, remember, let's get stuff done.